Today we are going to make a curried butternut squash soup with a roast beef sandwich and some mini pumpkin muffins. So they're actually just in a pumpkin mold muffin, so they're just pumpkin muffins, but they're in pumpkin molds, so they're double pumpkin. So let's start by getting our onion chopped up and caramelizing for our soup. We're gonna saute up our butternut squash and our onions. We'll add in some curry, turmeric, cumin, a little bit of ginger to give it some nice vibes, and then we will work on our muffins here. I just pull out a little bit of the middle of my onion. Sometimes you get a little brown spot. Okay, and then we're gonna dice these up. You don't have to go super small or anything like that because we're gonna be pureeing our whole soup, so it's essentially gonna be a nice thick puree base. So you can make them larger if you want to. We're gonna add in about, I wanna say, a tablespoon of olive oil, just enough to give a little, cover on the bottom of your pan. I'm gonna turn my Dutch oven up to about a 7, so a medium high. I'm gonna add in our whole diced up yellow onion here. I'm gonna get a spoon and we'll give it a good stir. Kind of coat up those onions. And again, before we kind of start on our next process, let's see. Yeah, I think we can move on to the next one. I'm gonna wash my hands, get a little bit of that oniony flavor off. And let's start making our pumpkin muffins. So I have my cute little pumpkin patch tray. So we're gonna bake up some little pumpkins in our pumpkin muffin thing. So let's start out with, we need a cup of pumpkin puree. So I have about a cup of pumpkin puree left over from the other day. So we're gonna add this in here. Let me grab a spoon out. And then we're gonna use a half a cup of sourdough discard. So I'm just gonna scoop it all out. There we go. But if you have a full can, a can has typically, it's like 1 2/3 or 1 3/4 cup of pumpkin in it. It's not a full 2 cups. So don't just put a whole can in. Then we're gonna do a half a cup of our sourdough discard. I think that's gonna actually use up just about all of this discard. So we'll add this in. And then we're gonna add in 1/4 cup of melted butter, which is a half a stick of butter. And then we're gonna give a good mix and kind of incorporate these all together before we add in our next set of ingredients. That way we can make sure it all gets mixed in well. There we go. So I'm just simply gonna kind of dilute that sourdough discard into the pumpkin. Both of those are gonna give like great moisture to these muffins. Pumpkin puree always leaves for a really soft and moist muffin, and so does sourdough discard, so that makes them just even better. Okay, so I've got these all about mixed up here. I'm gonna give my onions a little stir over here, and now that it's nice and hot, I'm gonna turn it down to about a 6 now. And that's gonna be for our curried butternut squash soup. Okay, let's get our eggs in here. So we're gonna use 2 eggs. And a whole cup of brown sugar. Now that brown sugar is going to give this pumpkin a really nice kind of molassesy flavor there. It's gonna be so lovely. I prefer it over using like granulated sugar. So we want 1 whole cup of powdered or of brown sugar, and that's going to be the sweetness for these muffins. And we're gonna mix those eggs and the brown sugar in. So I'm just gonna pop those yolks and we'll mix it in here. And we just wanna make sure they both get mixed in well. And then we're gonna add in our salt, our baking soda, and our spices. So here's a time when you can mix it up well. Once we add that flour in, we want to really minimize the amount of mixing so that our muffins stay really soft. We give our onions again a nice little stir. I'm going to turn them down to about a 5. Once our Dutch oven gets nice and hot, I just slowly bring the temperature down and down because it's going to keep it nice and hot. Okay, let's do our spices. Where's my teaspoon? That is a half tablespoon. Here we go. We need a teaspoon of baking soda. So between the eggs and the baking soda, this is what's going to give our muffins a nice rise. And then we need a teaspoon of vanilla extract. A half a teaspoon of salt. And a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. And you want a lot, so it has a lot of great flavor. If your pumpkin pie spice is old, like you got it last year, it might be a little bit more mellow. So add a little bit more on there. Because spices, they don't go bad, but they dull out over time. Okay, let's mix these guys in. And then we'll be ready to add in our flour. And these will be ready to bake up. Just make sure all that spice gets evenly distributed. There we go. And then we'll add in our flour. We're going to use all-purpose flour, but it's going to just be delicious. I feel like, you know, Halloween's almost here, so it's like full-blown fall right now. And then the leaves here in Tennessee are really starting to change. We're getting all those really vibrant reds and oranges, and so it's just so pretty. There we go. Okay, I think I got one more. I don't know if it's a brown sugar clump, but I want to make sure to get it out. And then we just need 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And when we mix this in, we're going to gently mix it in, make sure we don't over mix it, because we don't want stiff muffins. We want nice, fluffy, soft, but moist, delicious muffins.
Do you have a question? What are the kids going for as Halloween?
So we're doing a family costume this year. We do a family costume almost every year. And so we're going as different DuckTales characters. So my 3 boys are going as Huey, Dewey, and Louie, so the little ones. I'm going to go as Scrooge McDuck. Evie is going to go as Webby, which in the T-Cartoon show is the duck friend on there. My husband's going to go as Darkwing Duck. And then Lena is going to go as Lena, which is actually spelled the same as her name, but it's kind of like a half evil, half good duck in the show. So she's going to go as that, which kind of fits her personality too. And we're going to mix in our cup of flour here until it's just barely mixed in. Be careful not to overmix. Once you kind of just stop seeing the white powder from the flour, that's when you know. You want a good kind of lumpy batter in there. The more you mix it, the stiffer your muffin will get. So I'm just going to do a scoop around, make sure there's no pockets. And we're golden. Okay, before we add these into our things, we need to spray them down fairly well. I'm going to give my onions here. I'm going to turn them down low because they're almost ready for the garlic to go in, but I'll do that after I put them in the oven. So I'm just going to turn them down to a 2, kind of in a holding. But here we go. Spray these things down. I will say you can do regular Pam, but Pam, and there's a couple other brands, but they make a baking one that has a little bit of flour in it, which allows it to like it's a better nonstick. But make sure you coat each one. That way when they're ready to come out, they'll slide right out. There we go. Now we're gonna spoon in our batter. I'm just gonna get a metal spoon. I think I can do it with my stick spoon. Okay. We're gonna spoon in each batter. And don't overfill each one with each one because you don't want it to, you wanna make sure you get it out evenly. These are a little bit, they're not uniform pumpkins. So I am going to be very careful because some pumpkins are slightly bigger than other pumpkins in here because it's a pumpkin patch and no same pumpkin is equal. So they are slightly different in sizes, so I'm just gonna make sure I have them evenly by going through with a little bit at first and then we'll even them out. I remember, so this tray has been around since I was in high school. So back in the early 2000s, I grabbed it from my mom's house when I was over there earlier this week. And I remember she bought this back there, Williams and Sonoma, and I remember when we first made them, they were like so cute, little pumpkin things. And I feel like I take this tray from her almost every single year to make my little pumpkin patch muffins because, I mean, how cute is it to have pumpkin muffins that are literally little pumpkins? I also have a big pumpkin. It's so you can make like a pumpkin cake, but you put it together and it's like one big pumpkin. So I might have to whip that out, make like a big pumpkin loaf. Okay, I'm gonna go through and we're gonna kind of even these out for this. Now with these, you don't wanna fill them up to the tippy top like I normally love to fill up my muffins because they won't stand up if they dome over too much. So leaving them a little bit of space really helps it so that they can sit and actually look like pumpkins.
You have a question? Where'd you get the pan?
This is a Nordic ware pan. I got this, well, I should say my mom got this decades ago at Williams and Sonoma, but I do believe I have this in my Amazon storefront. It's Nordic ware, so you can get on there, but I love it. They have so many cute little like muffin and cupcake pans. I have so many of them, which is not a necessity, but is a necessity in life. I've got little gingerbread. I gotta find my skull pan. I have little skulls, bugs, flowers. They're little tea-lit pans. Completely unnecessary, but I even have like a little winter one that's like snowflake presents, stockings, and wreaths. Okay, these are all just about fairly even. I'm just gonna kind of clean off a little bit. There we go. And let me give my hands a quick rinse. Now, normally, I love putting pumpkin seeds on these, but since these aren't really gonna be facing up with the pumpkin seeds, I'm just gonna leave them off because you kind of flip them over. So let me just give a quick wipe off, that way my pan just is a little bit easier with a good shake up. And then we're gonna pop these in the oven. I'm gonna bake these here for about 20 minutes, and then we'll take them out and let them cool. Now, this is a little wonky of a thing, so it may take a little bit more, because so we'll check after 20 minutes. But it shouldn't take any less. Okay, let's get on to cutting up and dicing up our butternut squash. We're not gonna use the whole thing because I swear when I go to the store, I have the knack, I always have to pick out like the biggest produce. Because I feel like I'm getting a better deal with it when you actually pay per pound, so there's really no deal to be had, but mentally there is. So I've got this giant butternut squash, but we don't need to use it all up at one time. So I'm just going to cut off, and we're just going to use the top part. I'm going to save this for future Lena, and she'll thank me for having to do the bulb part later, which is the worst part of cutting up a butternut squash. But the top part is really, really easy. So what you want to do is you want to make two level surfaces, a top and a bottom. And then you just take your knife and you're just going to go along the edge like this to peel that skin off. You don't need a potato peeler or anything like this. This works just great.
You have a question? Do you have the recipe posted for the muffins or the soup?
These are the muffins that I'm making are my pumpkin sourdough muffins, which I believe I posted that recipe card out for our members like a month ago or so. So definitely have that one out. I did make a version of this soup, which I believe I made as a recipe card for our members, but I'm doing this one slightly different in the fact that I'm not using coconut milk. So I've done a curried coconut butternut squash one. This one's gonna be a curried butternut squash without the coconut milk, simply because I didn't have a can of it, but you can always use a little bit of cream to get that same, just less of a coconut flavor. So, yes on both, sort of. Okay, before I dice this up, I want to get my garlic in here so I can start sauteing. My onions have a nice, beautiful caramelization, which will really help bring out their flavors when we puree it up. You want to make sure they're just lovely. Okay, so I've got maybe 5 or 6 cloves of garlic. Now these are like giant cloves. So it's going to be probably about a tablespoon or so of fresh garlic kind of minced up, but you can always use garlic as well. But since this is going to go in that sauce, this is going to add such a nice flavor, and it's going to work really well with the curry powder, turmeric, cumin, and ginger that I'm going to add into this soup. There we go. And then we're going to make just a little bit. I have some leftover focaccia from last night, and we are going to make some sandwiches using it because it is really great sandwich bread. It's almost like a ciabatta, but it's just like it has nice flavorful crusty top. And we're gonna do just roast beef and cheddar, and then I'll do one roast beef cheddar and tomato pesto to make a Romanesco sandwich, which is delicious. Okay, we've got our garlic here, all minced up. You don't have to do super fine mincing because, again, we will be pureeing this soup up. But you don't want to have just huge chunks because then you're not going to get as much caramelized garlic flavor. So I'm going to add those in. We'll let those kind of toast up with those onions. And while we do, let's get our butternut squash diced up. I'm going to do nice kind of smaller cubes so that it will cook up a little bit faster. Now, butternut squash is such a tender veggie that gets really soft fairly quickly, which is why it's wonderful for making soups because it's not as starchy as, say, sweet potato or even buttercup squash. You don't need to use quite as much broth to get a thinner texture on it. So it is lovely. So we're going to start by cubing it up. Now, you can always do a roasted butternut squash where you then coat these in oil, roast them up in the oven, and then saute them. But I find it's also great to just saute them in the pan. You get a little bit more of a caramelization flavor on it and it helps with that cooking process and breaking it down as well. So, lots of different methods to do to get to the same kind of soup in the end. So again, nice little cubed up pieces. And a little bit of squash can go a long way in making a nice thick soup because it really takes a lot of the liquid to thin it out. Not as bad again as potatoes or sweet potatoes, but it's not one that's going to go runny fast. There we go. Oh, that garlic that's sauteing just smells so lovely. And they always when you go get air fresheners, I was just reading a magazine thing about how you can make your house smell good by baking a dish of water and vanilla in the oven. And I was like, they never make savory scents. And I'm like, I don't know, roasted garlic would just smell so delicious. But then I think it'd probably make everybody hungry if there was. But there's just nothing better than onions and garlic caramelizing in the pan. Okay, we'll get these last little bits down, and then we're going to get them in the pan and start sauteing our garlic. I'm going to give it a little stir, but it's starting to get a nice kind of golden color on here. I'm going to turn up my heat just a smidge to about a 4. Again, I don't want to be too high on there with the garlic because garlic can burn really, really fast. It's more delicate once it's exposed to high temperature. it will go from golden brown and crispy to burnt in less than a minute. So it's one that you don't want to cook too high, especially if you don't have your eyes on it the whole time. Okay, these are all looking good. So even though I didn't even use my whole thing, I've got a good amount of butternut squash here. We can start adding these into our saute pan, or not our saute pan, our Dutch oven. And we'll give them a good stir. We're gonna let them kind of saute up, and then we're gonna add in our spices. That way the butternut squash can really cook with the spices, which is going to allow them to meld better into the kind of the broth base of it. So let me turn this guy up to about a 6 now that I've got all of this squash in here. We're gonna coat all of the squash with that residual oil and onion and garlic. Here. And we're gonna let that saute up for just a few minutes. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna wash my hands because they're a little orange from the butternut squash. We can start working on our sandwich. So we're gonna do roast beef. We've got our focaccia left over from yesterday. We ate about half of it up last night. But I always love to have, you know, sometimes we have some, sometimes we don't. I just never know how much my kids are gonna eat. But this is the best for making sandwiches. So I'm actually not going to necessarily use all of it because I might save a little bit to make our homemade croutons with it. But you see how nice and bubbly it is? All sourdough. We put rosemary, thyme, and green onions, garlic, salt, and black pepper on it. So all of those flavors are going to go into our sandwich. I'm going to save this one because this is going to make some great croutons. Maybe I'll make something with that, a salad or soup, to do croutons in it later this week. Now these are going to be 2 good-sized sandwiches, which we'll actually probably cut down into 4 sandwiches. So you're just going to carefully cut through the middle. And look, you're just going to have this nice kind of thick, but it's still soft. You see all that bubble from the sourdough in there? Lovely. But you're going to have all that flavor on that top one. I always say the middle of the focaccia is best for the sandwiches than using the like the ends, because the middle is a little bit thicker and you don't have that whole crusty edge on it, which is kind of hard to like when it toasts up, it can get really crunchy. Let's give this a nice little toss. And we're going to let it saute for just a little bit longer before we add our spices in. Okay. For this, we're going to keep one of them plain, and then one of them we're going to add our tomato pesto on it to make it like a roast beef and cheddar Romanesco sandwich, which has got that nice pesto on it. There we go. I'm going to add that in there. With using a focaccia, I don't need to butter the outsides of my sandwich because it has, when you make a focaccia, you actually put a lot of olive oil on it to give it a crispy crunch. So it already has a little fat on it, which will crisp up more when we put it on there. Okay. And now we're going to do our cheddar cheese. I'll do a slice. So each sandwich will have 2 slices on it, but each sandwich will be cut in half to make 2 sandwiches. It's just easier to do 2 bigger ones than 4 small ones. Okay. Before we finish up our sandwiches, let's add our spices in here. And we're going to let those kind of simmer up for just a few minutes. We're going to use some ginger, a ginger paste. I'm going to use about a teaspoon. There we go. And the star of the show is this one, curry powder. We're gonna use a good amount of curry powder. I want about a tablespoon in here. Now, if you just bought your curry powder, you can probably use a little bit less. I know that this is one of my ones that I probably bought last year because I don't use curry powder as much. And so it dulls out. And I said curry powder is one of the fastest spices to dull out. I'm gonna have turmeric here. I'm gonna use about a teaspoon of turmeric. And then I have some cumin. And these all have really great like earthy flavors that are gonna work really well together. I'm gonna do about a teaspoon of cumin. And about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm gonna sprinkle some onion powder over the top. This is gonna give it some more great savory flavor. We're gonna before I mix it in, I'm gonna let it kind of steam up into the steam kind of moisten up the spices, and then we'll mix it in here in just a second. Okay, and here I've got our roast beef, and we'll just divide this between our sandwiches. I know I was deciding, I bought the roast beef and I was like, I gotta make a roast beef, but I wasn't sure how I was gonna do my roast beef sandwich this week. I was thinking about a French dip, because I do love a good French dip. And then, I don't know, I was like, you know what, this sounds good. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, you could add in red onion, some mustard, but we're keeping it simple because our bread has a lot of flavor. I'm gonna start warming this guy up, and we can start putting it on here to toast up. And then we're gonna mix our spices in. But right now, I just have my sandwiches kind of heating over about a 6.
So you have a question? Do you feel like you have more control over cooking with gas or electric?
I feel like I have more control with electric. I think gas is beautiful looking, and there are some perks to it, like if you wanted to do like a flame roasted veggie or whatnot. But gas is electric is very, very consistent, especially with the oven. An electric oven is very, very consistent. Where gas can, because it will go up and down with the flame, and there's a little bit of differences to it. I never thought I would say that because I grew up with gas, and I thought I always wanted gas. But now that I've had an electric stove for like 17 years now, I really like electric. And every time I go over, my mom has this beautiful, nice Viking big range thing. And I still prefer my little dinky electric because I know exactly how everything cooks. And maybe it's because I'm used to it now on there, but I do like electric. Now, I just wish they made electric and a nice 6 burner, the little bit longer. They don't really make those. So I started by adding in a cup of water. We're mixing it around. As you can see, we've already started to get some of that butternut squash is already starting to get softened up. But I just do a little at a time so I can scrape those herbs off the bottom. Now I'm using water, but I'm gonna add in a big scoop of vegetable bouillon. You could also use just vegetable broth, or you could use chicken broth. Both are really great for the soup on here. I decided to stick with the vegetable because I'm doing curried, and I just feel like the vegetable broth really goes well with the curried flavors. There we go. And a little bit more. Maybe we can add the rest in now. So 4 cups in there because again, I'm making like a small batch soup on here. I'm gonna turn up my burner high so that it can start to simmer those butternut squash. We will add a little bit of cream in to make it extra creamy, but I don't do that until I'm about to blend it because otherwise it can curdle in your soup. Let me get my twist it open, there we go. We're gonna add in a big heaping spoonful of our vegetable bouillon here. And this is gonna give the saltiness to our soup, because if you've noticed, I haven't added any salt. So it's about a heaping spoonful or a heaping tablespoon. And that should give me enough salt to flavor the whole broth. And I think that's kind of why I really like using bouillon over using vegetable broth or chicken broth. Is store-bought vegetable broth and chicken broth is kind of bland. And so you then end up having to add a bit more salt and whatnot to your soup. And I find that bouillon, you can add a bit more, get more of that flavor out of it, and it gives you that saltiness as well without having to add additional salt on top of it. So let's give this a nice stir up. I'm gonna taste it, see if I need to add any more spices, but I'm hoping I'm good. Perfect. We've got these mellow kind of curry, a little bit of that cumin and turmeric, making up a spice now. Okay, let's get these, let's see how they are. I like to do kind of my double sides where I flip on both sides twice to kind of make sure I'm heating up the sandwich before I do it. But looking at it, luckily these are already kind of pre-cooked toasted, so it's a little bit easier. I'm gonna turn it up just a bit more. And let's go prep up our kind of toppings to go on our soup. So I have, let me get my fresh garlic out. We don't want that to go in our soup. We're gonna have Parmesan cheese, green onions, and pumpkin seeds. So those are what you're gonna put on over your soup, and it's going to make them absolutely delicious. This adds, because we're gonna blend our soup up, and this is going to add a little bit of texture so that you don't have just the monotony of a smooth bisque. I like a little chunk in there. And you can change it up. So I'm using green onions and pumpkin seeds and Parmesan cheese. You could also use pistachios, are really great as well. I really like the onion flavor for it, but you could also go with like a parsley for a little more muted flavor. So I've got those. Let's give our soup a little stir here. And then once I'm able to easily push through a piece, like a large piece of squash with my fork, I'll know that it is ready to puree up. It should be getting there soon. So let me find a big guy. Here we go. So these, and then what I'm gonna do is, see, and I'm almost there, so I've got it pretty there. Maybe a little bit more, because you want it to go down pretty quickly through it so that it's nice and smooth. If you're undercooked, you're gonna have a grittier texture. So that's always my check. Go find the largest one and put your fork through it. If it can go through the largest one, then the rest of your squash will be up and ready. Okay, let's check our sandwiches. Our pumpkin mini loaves are about to be out here, so they will be ready in just a second. They're looking good. Okay, let them toast up here on the other side. And let's head over to our oven because that's about to beep in just a few minutes, or a few seconds, not minutes. We'll beep by the time we get there. Okay, have our 5 seconds left. Now I'm going to check onto it, make sure, but it looks like they are all done. But again, we want to make sure we give them, have a nice firm top. That lets you know that they're cooked all the way and they won't sink in. But these are our cute little pumpkins, little pumpkin patch pumpkin muffins. Now I'm going to, you don't want to flip them out right away. You need to let them cool for about 5 minutes before they flip out, or before you flip them out, so that they don't get stuck to it, but you don't want to wait until they completely cool. But this is our sourdough pumpkin muffins, my classic recipe, with a whole cup of pumpkin puree. We used a 1/4 cup of melted butter. We have a whole tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, which is really going to give just delicious flavors. Okay, let me flip this guy over, and you know what? While this is I'm gonna pop this in the oven because they're toasted up, and we're gonna let the cheese and kind of melt here a little bit faster on there. So it's gonna just go right in our oven. I think I'm gonna put it on the air fryer setting at 425. This is going to allow it to heat up the meat as well as the cheese a little bit faster. So let me put my oven to my air fryer setting. And I'm gonna do 425, and then I'm just gonna set my timer here for about 4 minutes. It's not gonna take very long. We'll whip it up, and once that goes off, we'll be able to get it out, and we can at least finish up on there, but that's gonna allow it to pop up. But I am feeling my soup right here. As you can see, we've got a lovely rolling boil here. So I'm gonna turn it down. I'm gonna find myself a nice piece of squash, and I can already tell, as you can see, they're already falling apart wonderfully. These are ready to puree. So I'm gonna turn this off completely. Turn this guy off over here. Before we do that, I'm gonna add in a little bit of our cream, so that way when we blend it, it's gonna whisk in here. I don't put a whole lot of cream, but just enough to kind of cut through a little bit of that curdy. And we're gonna put in about, I wanna say, 1/4 of a cup. Not a lot. A little will go a long way in this dish. And now let's blend it up. I'm gonna grab my little blender over here, and we're gonna ladle it in. And I'm gonna use my soup setting on my my Vitamix here, which is nice. You can easily mimic it at home with a regular one, but it starts off a little bit slower to get all the big chunks, and then as it's pureed after on a slow one, it gets faster.
You have a question? Could you use coconut milk?
Yes, I actually have this recipe posted for our members that I typically use coconut milk because it gives it a nice coconut flavor with it, which pairs really well with the curried one. But I didn't have any coconut milk, so I used a little bit of cream, which will give you'll still get all the nice savory flavors. You just won't get a hint of that coconut.
And can you go over what's in the soup?
Yes, so this is our curried butternut squash soup. And we have about 1/2 of a really large butternut squash in here. Onions, curry powder, turmeric, cumin, ginger, and onions and black pepper. As I said, did I say those? Yeah. And we kind of sauteed and caramelized up the onions first, then the garlic, then we sauteed up the butternut squash and seasoned it up. And now we're ready to puree. Put our lid on, secure it. Always put your lid on. And then I'm gonna do my soup setting, which is just a nice little bougie thing. It's gonna start low, and then after about 10-15 seconds, it's gonna go from the low setting and slowly dial up to the higher setting, which just helps give it a really smooth, very smooth broth. Well, this type thing. Now, butternut squash is such a lovely one that it's a more of a smoother, velvety one. You don't get the necessarily as thick as you would get with a buttercup squash. It's a much thicker one. We're gonna pour it right back in here, but you can see we've got this nice kind of thick, but not too thick, bisque-like texture to our soup, which will have all this lovely flavor. And that's the nice thing is, I always say, like, you can always do like the roast in the oven, but the caramelization of the veggies just adds a whole nother level of flavor. So we don't even need this over here. Okay, let's go grab our sandwich out because we're ready. We'll flip out our muffins here in just a second, but this should be nice and toasted up. Beautiful. Perfect timing. You can see the cheddar cheese is melted on our sandwich. We've got a nice little crispy edge on our leftover sourdough focaccia that we baked up last night with dinner, which is going to add just a lovely bit of flavor to our sandwiches. Okay. Let me put this over, or dust off those crumbs. And we're gonna put our pumpkin muffins out on here. Remember, you always want to let them cool for a little bit before you take them out. You don't want to leave them too long, but you want to let them cool just enough. And look, we'll build our little pumpkin patch here with our little pumpkins. You're gonna burn yourself, they're hot. My husband tried to take them out, but everyone tells me my hands can like hold lava. That I'm always very, can take a lot of heat. Everyone's like, how could you not burn yourself? This is his failed attempt. He tried to get it and he failed. Gotta go from the corners. Here we go, get this last one out, but they're cute little things. Now, if you really wanna jazz it up, you take a little bit of powdered sugar and you dust it over the top, look at this guy, of each muffin, and it actually really brings out the little crevices and little lines of each pumpkin. But aren't these just darling? There's a little pumpkin patch of pumpkin muffins. And again, I have this pan is a Nordic ware pan, pumpkin patch thing. I do believe I have it in my Amazon storefront, but look how cute that thing is. Super darling. Okay, let's get ready to serve up dinner, or lunch. It's not even dinner time. Okay, off. Don't grab that handle. Okay, let me get my Parmesan cheese. I got my pumpkin seeds. I want to just make sure I have everything ready to build up my lunchtime plate here. Okay. Parmesan cheese is a must. It adds just a lovely bit of richness to the soup. I know, I was joking with my husband that I was like, you know, you see all those videos of people like buying a giant Parmesan wheel and, you know, they never end up like eating it. I truly think we could eat a whole Parmesan wheel in less than a year. And it would be delicious, every bite of it. Okay. My seeds ready. I've got my ladle. And let me grab my spatula. Okay, for lunch today, we have our roast beef and cheddar Romanesco sandwich on our homemade sourdough focaccia. So we cut our focaccia in half, then we added sun-dried tomato pesto, cheddar cheese, and roast beef, and we sauteed it on a pan and then melted everything up in the oven nice and quick. And we will be serving this with a nice big bowl of our creamy curried butternut squash soup made with vegetable bouillon, curry powder, turmeric, ginger, cumin. And we're gonna top this soup off with a little bit of green onions, a little bit of pumpkin seeds, and of course, some freshly grated Parmesan cheese to add just a little bit of texture to that nice velvety broth. And of course, let's not forget our cute, darling little sourdough pumpkin muffins that are little pumpkins for a nice little sweet treat at the end. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my Hex-Clad pans, and certainly I have my pumpkin Nordic ware tray, my Vitamix, all the different gadgets I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.